Welcome to Veritus Group's webinar, The Hidden Problem That's Costing Nonprofits Thousands or maybe Millions of Dollars. I am Amy Chapman. I'm Director of Client Engagement here at Veritus Group, and I'm really happy to be supporting Jeff behind the scenes today as he presents on this topic. Before we jump into the presentation, I just want to take care of a few housekeeping details and make sure you're familiar with our webinar system. Because of the number of you joining us today, we aren't able to take your questions out loud, but they're super important to us. So please do leave them in the Q&A box. I will be working behind the scenes to field them and answer some of them, but we'll also, at the end of Jeff's presentation, have time for some live Q&A addressing some of your questions. So please leave them there. Also, we have an international audience joining us today. And I want to note that you can turn on translated captions and select your preferred language in your Zoom settings. And finally, each of you will be receiving a recording of the webinar and the slide deck via email tomorrow. So please check that out. Now, let's begin the webinar. Jeff, I'll pass it over to you.
Thanks, Amy. Welcome, everyone. Great to have you with me. This is going to be fun because I've done this particular webinar over the last 5 years. I mean, it's changed a little bit, but essentially the same. So it's been like 60 different times. I am very, very passionate about this one because it will reveal some things that I think can help you really understand what's going on with your donors and things you can do to change what is happening right now with the problem of donor and donor value attrition, which we'll get into. But before we get going, I'm Jeff Schreifels, and I'm the principal and owner of Veritus Group. I have been doing this work for a long time, and everything that we're going to talk about today is based on all the years of that work that I've done, but also all the work that our team has done over the last 2 decades working with mid and major and planned giving officers. And over that time, I think we kind of know what works and what doesn't work. And so we're going to pass that information on to you. All right? Okay, here are some of the objectives for today. We're going to discuss some of the significant problems that the nonprofit sector has and how we've kind of lost our way. We're also going to understand areas you need to focus on within your data so that you can assess your own donor file and identify potential issues that may be impacting your organizations, and then learn about some of the tools that you can catch those red flags within the donor file. So maybe most of you know a little bit about us, but for those who don't, I just want to let you know that Veritus Group is very passionate about relationship-focused fundraising. And we're grounded in a data-driven approach to mid, major, and planned giving. And we've learned all of that, as I said just a bit ago, by all the years of working with hundreds of nonprofits and thousands of frontline fundraisers. And in that course, we've also analyzed millions of donor records. And over the years, we've also had thousands of fundraisers come through our Veritus Group Academy. So in all of that work, we feel like we've learned some things, especially through our consulting, that we're working with organizations all over the world on a daily basis, and we're going to pass on that knowledge to you. Here are just some of the organizations we've worked with over the years, and currently you can see that there's a smattering of all kinds of different organizations, both large and small, and from almost every sector. So we've seen it all. Okay, I want to start a little bit on the negative side about why I think we've lost our way in the nonprofit sector. So here are some of the problems we've identified, especially as it relates to mid and major gift programs and planned giving. First of all, leadership. These mid and major gift programs are rudderless. That's what we see. Either they're non-existent or they're floundering. And that's because there's a lack of leadership. We see a lot of nonprofits struggling with high donor and donor value attrition, which I'm going to talk about in a little bit. Fundraising talent, as we all know, is turning over extremely high rates. Internal cultures and advancement opportunities really lack inclusion as well. And there's a lack of understanding around mid and major gifts and planned giving by nonprofit leaders. And as a sector, I feel like we've lost our way and we've forgotten our mission. Remembering that our mission is more than just the thing that we're doing to help change the world. It is also our staff and our donors. So the minute that a nonprofit hires someone or takes on a volunteer to help them do the mission, and they take $1 from someone to help them do that mission, your mission expands to your staff and those donors. Nonprofits haven't embraced that. They're still looking at their mission as the thing they're doing, rather than the people that are helping them do it and the donors that are funding those projects and programs. So we've lost our way a bit. Excuse me. So understanding attrition. There's two types of attrition. There's donor attrition and there's donor value attrition. So donor attrition, we all know, has been really lagging. You know, we talk about this in our industry all the time. Donors are going away. We're not retaining these donors, and it's been a real struggle for nonprofits. But it's kind of a mental exercise. We haven't really felt it because we're looking at percentages a lot. We're not actually looking at what does that mean. So it's like we bring in donors, more than half of them go away, and we're losing them and we're trying to hang on to them. So when we say, well, our donor attrition, it's about 50%, or our best donors hold on, at a 70% range, we don't really equate that into dollars very much. And so it doesn't feel so bad. But donor value attrition is when donors either go away and or give less year over year. And this is something that most nonprofits don't track. But here's an example of what I'm talking about in one particular portfolio of a major gift officer. In year one, this portfolio of 150 donors brought in just over $1.9 million. By the year three, these same donors, 150 donors, were now only giving $584,315. Or we lost from year one to year three almost 70% of the value of those donors. Now, what's so amazing is that amount, 1.9 million, and now they're only giving 584,000. That is significant. So while 30% of the donors went away, that doesn't feel so emotional. But when you look at the numbers and 1.99 million down to 584,000, that is a tremendous amount of revenue lost. Here's another way to look at this. This is just bottom line revenue. And if you look and concentrate on view one, this is how most nonprofit managers, executives would look at the strength of a major gift program. This is donors who have all given $1,000 cumulative in year one and two. So you can see in year one, the bottom line program for mid and major gifts brought in $2.5 million. The next year, that program brought in $3.1 million, or they gained 21% in 1 year. So if you're the CEO or the development director, you're feeling really good about that number. I mean, that's good growth, 21% growth in year over year. But what we do at Veritus is peel the onion back a little bit, and we want to know those donors that came in year one, what did those same donors give in year 2? And as you can see, it went from 2.5 to 1.3 million. We lost 49% of their value in just 1 year. The only reason they grew is new donors came in at the 1,000 plus cum level, almost 1.8 million worth, to mask the behavior of the donors that we lost in year 1 to year 2. So we gained 21%, but we lost $1.3 million in revenue from year 1 to year 2. This is what most nonprofits are not looking at. They're just looking at bottom line numbers, and I get that. But that only tells part of the story. So that's what value attrition is. Here's another way to look at this. This is an actual organization that in year 1, their revenue was 20 million, and by year 3, it was 23.3 million. Or over that time period, they grew almost 17%. So keep that number in mind. 17% growth over that 3-year period, not bad. Okay? But then what we did is we broke it down by individuals and organizations and by specific year and tracked the giving behavior of those donors in year 1 and year 2 and through 3. As you can see, in the individuals, that first year they brought in 2.5 million. Those same donors by year 3 were now bringing in 7.5, or we lost about 28% of their value. And then new donors came in year 2, 3.1 million. Those same donors the next year gave 1.7, or we lost 44% of their value in 1 year. And then you can see what organizations, very similar to individuals. If you track the value attrition for both of these groups over these 3-year period, you can see this organization lost $9.1 million to value attrition. 9.1. So remember, they grew by 17% year over year. But overall, they lost $9.1 million. Now, when we showed this to the executive director of the nonprofit, he was blown away. He had no idea that any of this was happening. Why? Because he was just being reported to the bottom line numbers. And the bottom line numbers was showing fairly good incremental growth year over year. So the question he asked, of course, would be, what if we could at least stop that value attrition by half? I'm not talking about we're going to get all of it, because there's always going to be some attrition going on. But what if we could recoup half of that? That's another $4.5 million for a program that we didn't have. That's a good question. So what's going on here? Another thing we see when we look at the data is probably something you would see in your files as well. Donors who are giving the same amount every single year. Good, loyal donors. In this case, this was right out of their file, $2,000 every year. Tons of donors were giving the same amount. Even at the 25,000 level, 25,000 every year. What this indicates to us is that the organization is not asking. Either they're not asking for the gift, and they just expect that the donor is going to give every year. You know, like, wow, they give every November, and we never even have to really ask them. Or, you know, you just send a letter asking them to renew their gift. So they're a loyal donor, and they're always giving, you know, the same amount. Typically what we find when we really dig in and ask what's happening with these donors, no one is talking to them. No one is meeting with them. No one knows who these donors really are. They're not trying to find out what the donor's passions and interests are as it relates to the mission. And therefore, all the donor's doing is that same gift every year. And we know that these donors who are giving $25,000 to this organization every year are giving $2.5 million or $250,000 to some other organization. Why? Because those organizations are doing a better job of cultivating and stewarding those donors. Very simply, this is how we lose donors. So let's concentrate on the orange box here. So this is what a donor is saying to us. Hey, you made me aware of a problem and you asked me if I could help. And you said I would be able to make a difference if I helped. So I believed you and I gave what I could. And then this is where the organization has a choice to make. Either they're going to go up where the red goes, where most organizations go, where they don't tell the donor how their gift made a difference, and the donor goes away. Remember that value attrition? This is why it's happening. We're not talking to the donor and telling them how they've made an impact. Or the organization has done a good job, told them how their gift has made a difference, and then they want to help again. So I just want to share a story here. Because when I showed that slide that I just showed you, I've shown that slide hundreds of times. When I'm speaking at a conference, I show that slide and I look out at the audience, and what I see is, oh yeah, I know that. Yeah, we got to tell the donor, they're making an impact. We know this. We know it. And I feel like we hear it so much, but we don't actually do it. Let me tell you a story. I was on a flight from Dallas to Midland, Texas. Midland, Texas is oil country in Texas. That's where all the oil wells, huge. It's everywhere. So I'm on the flight, I'm sitting down, and this big guy, he's dressed in jeans and it's kind of dirty. And he's got this t-shirt on and that also is kind of dirty. His fingernails are dirty. Like I'm thinking, okay, he sits down next to me. And I'm thinking, okay, this guy must work on the oil rigs in Midland. And, he's kind of a chatty guy. And he says, hey, like, what's your name? What do you do? And I said, well, I work with nonprofits and around major gifts. And he says, oh, major gifts. He goes, I've given a few of those before. And I was like, first of all, don't ever judge a book by the cover. Because even though he was dirty, this guy, what I found out, actually owned some of the oil wells. Okay. And he was going to check on them. So here I am. This is perfect for me. Here I'm sitting next to a major donor, and this is what I do for a living. So I'm like in heaven. I'm thinking, I got an hour with this guy. I'm going to ask him all kinds of questions. So the first thing I did was, tell me about some of the experiences you've had giving those major gifts. And he kind of looked up in the air. He's like, you know what? No one's ever asked me that before. And then he was thinking about it a little more, and he said, I've had one really good experience, and I've had one really awful experience. And I was like, I got to hear this. So I said, tell me the awful experience first. I want to hear this. So here it is. This gentleman made a $1.5 million gift to his favorite university. And it was something that was very specific. He gave $1.5 million to help build the wide receivers coaches' offices of a new athletic complex. Very specific. I said, well, why that? And he said, well, when I was in high school, I was a wide receiver and I wasn't the best player, but I loved being on that team so much. I just had the best experience in playing high school football. And when I heard that this opportunity came up, I wanted to do this. So obviously he had a lot of passion for it. It reminded him of being in high school. It was a big deal for him. So I said, well, why was this such a bad experience? He says, Jeff, when I gave that $1.5 million, all I got back, all I heard from that university was a letter in the mail thanking me for the $1.5 million. And that was it. I said, you got to be kidding me. All you got was a letter. No one called you. No one asked you to, nothing. He said, Jeff, nothing. That's all I got. And he said, in fact, I was going to be down there on business in the city of this university. So I asked him, hey, could I come down and at least see the wide receivers coaches' offices? And they said, oh, yeah, sure. We'll set you up and give you a tour of it. So he goes to the university, and they put some freshman in charge of the tour who doesn't know anything about why he's really there, just that he's supposed to go see the wide receivers office, coach's office. And that's all it was. This lone college freshman and him walking through the athletic complex and looking at the coach's office. No coaches were there. No one greeted him. That was it. And he said, I just felt like they could care less that I gave any money to them at all. And he said, I was going to give a sizable amount of my estate to them when I died. And that day, I decided they were done. I wasn't going to send them anything. So here is an example right here of someone made a gift. No one even followed up on with him, didn't tell him anything, and lost out on millions and millions of dollars because they didn't follow up and report on the impact of that gift. And then I said, okay, well, tell me about the good one, right? He said, same thing. I gave $1.5 million, but I gave it to a veterans organization in my hometown to help build a new building. And I got to tell you, I got 5 letters thanking me from the board, from the CEO. But the best letters were 3 letters I got from veterans who were going to use that facility. And I was just brought to tears, Jeff. It was so emotional. And then they brought me and my family, invited all my extended family, my cousins, anybody I wanted to come to the building when it launched. They said all these great things. I was proud to be there and have my family be there. And even today, I go and visit them. And once a month, I get a call from the CEO just asking how I'm doing, checking in, asking me some questions every once in a while. But I feel like they really appreciated it, but they also wanted to keep me in the game there. And obviously, Jeff, you know what's going to happen. When I die, that organization is going to get my estate, and they are going to be blown away. They have no idea how many millions of dollars they're going to get. So I wanted to tell you that story because there's an emotional impact that happens to donors when you can report on the impact of their gifts. Do not overlook that. Please do not overlook that. All right, let's keep going here. All right, so here's some things to keep your eye on. If you're really serious about keeping those donors, so the number of donors, you want to look at the number of donors who give the same amount annually. If you've got a bunch of donors who are giving $1,000, $5,000 every year, why is that? The big reason most of the time is that you're not actually reaching out to them, except for maybe to get the annual gift. These are donors that could do so much more if you found out who they are, found out their passions and interests, and then related those interests to your mission. You want to be tracking those issues with new money like we saw. So you want to track the donors that gave one year, the same donors the next year, and then see how new money coming in is masking the behavior of those old donors, just like we saw. And then if there's too much focus on securing new money from new donors, you're most likely taking your eye off current donors. And then you want to make sure, do you have systems in place that support reporting on impact? Most often I see nonprofits don't have that infrastructure set up. They're not talking with program. And how are we going to report back on how these programs are effective or not? Critical that you do that. All right. let's look at what a healthy nonprofit pipeline looks like. This is the way it should go. From donor acquisition all the way to making planned and big capital gifts, we should be making it as easy as possible for a donor who gives that first gift all the way to their last gift. Donors want to do great things with your organization if they believe in your mission. You need to allow them to do that. But so often, nonprofits put up barriers that stop them from giving what they really truly want to give, whether it's internal problems that they have in the organization where they have KPIs that are set up to keep donors at a certain level, membership kind of programs where it's all about being a member and renewing membership versus continuing to give higher and higher gifts. It could be not having the right program set up. And if all you have is a direct response program and you don't have mid or major gifts, that'll be another barrier for donors to truly give what they want to give. So talking about that, mid-level is a big area. So we often find that organizations that do not have a real mid-level program that has a mid-level rep, sort of like a major gift officer, but has more donors in their portfolio, we often find a lot of clogs in a certain area, and many times it's around the 1,000 to 2,499 mark. Sometimes it's at the 1,000 to 4,999 group. There's a clog there, and it's usually because they're being cultivated through direct response only, and that's it. And so typically when people give in the mail, they give pretty much the same amounts every time. So when you don't have a mid-level program, we see a lot of these clogs. So how do you address some of that? We'll talk about that. That's a clog. That's a barrier for a donor when all they're doing is getting direct response. And you're being asked just for a lower kind of gift amount. If you have that mid-level rep who's now identifying those donors, starting to get to know them and soliciting them for higher gifts, that's where you can start to see those donors giving more and eventually moving into major gifts. That's why a mid-level program is so important. So here's some things to address that donor and donor value attrition. Besides just a mid-level program, is regularly and promptly reporting back on impact. We'll say this over and over again, but this is so important. Being committed to learning the donor's passions and interests. Without that, donors are not going to give big gifts. They may have the capacity to do it, but if you're not committed to learning what they're passionate about and matching that up with all your programs and projects, you're not going to see transformational gifts. You may see transactional gifts, but not transformational gifts. Along with committing to learning those donors' passions and interests, and in that process, you will build trust between you, the organization, and the donor. And then really connecting the donor directly to that mission. This is what needs to happen so that you see less and less donor and donor value attrition in your nonprofit. Okay, now I want to show you some data. So we're going to stop sharing this and we're going to share something new. All right, just one second. Here we go. Okay. We conduct a donor analysis on every organization before we start working with them. And we do this for free, and I'll talk about that later. But we do this because this allows us to know what is going on with their donor file, where there's areas of opportunity, and where they could go in the next 5 years if they really had a disciplined mid and major and plan giving program. So this organization, we're looking at all donors who have given $1,000 Q or more in any one of the last 4 years from 2017 to 2020. Okay. So if we looked in 2017, this group of donors, there were 7,000 donors that fit that criteria, brought in $7.3 million. And in 2020, they brought in $10.5 million. So over this period of time, they grew 44%. So basically almost a little more than 10% every year. So, they're feeling fairly good about that overall growth. Well, then we broke it out by foundations, organizations, and individuals. I'm going to focus on the individuals. So in 2017, those donors that hit the 1,000 plus Q mark equaled $5.7 million. Those same donors by 2020 were now giving 3.9. We lost 32% of their value over that time period. Okay. Now, there's always going to be some attrition. And I would say best in class is somewhere between 15-20%. So they're above that level. But then you look at the next core giving year. These are new donors that hit the 1,000 Q mark, was at 2.4 million. Those same donors by 2020 were now only giving 1.4, or we lost 43% of their value over that time period. And then you can see the class of what we call the class of 2019. These are not more new donors who had hit the 1,000 Q mark, 2.3 million. Those same donors brought in 1.74, or we lost 38% of their value. All told, we lost almost $4 million to value attrition from these individuals. That organization, remember, overall grew 44%, but they lost $4 million to value attrition that they didn't know. Then what we did is a pipeline analysis. I'll show you. So this is showing how many donors they have at each Q giving amount. You can see something, this is very interesting organization. So you can see they have a ton of donors who are giving small gifts. Look at that, 158,000 donors, 134,000 donors, 82,000 donors, a lot of small gift donors. So what does that tell you about this nonprofit? They are heavy direct response. They have been for years, asking for low-level gifts. But look at how they migrate. You can see the clogs here. At the 500 to 999 level, they had 8,610 donors giving 5.5 million. The next level, the 1,000 to 499, just 4,173. Okay, so it's like over half. There's a clog here. But look at this clog. It goes from 4,000 donors at the $5,000 to $9,000 level, 175. That is a huge drop-off right there. So what do you think is going on with this nonprofit? One, they have no mid-level program, and they have no really non-existent major gift program. But look at this. This nonprofit has over 500,000 donors giving almost $50 million a year. But hardly any of it is coming from mid or major gifts. So they rightly said, we need a major gift program. What could that look like for us? So we showed them. Now remember, let's go to the top here. They're at 10.4 million, right? That's the last full year we had. We looked at how many donors they had, and we were able to project over time, based on how their file would grow, that they would go from $1.1 million to $4.45 million in major gifts, and in mid-level, grow it from 3.1 to 22.5 million over 5 years. So for this nonprofit, mid-level is huge growth opportunity as well as major gifts. And over a 5-year period, while they were on track to go from 10 million to 18 million over 5 years, just on their current growth rate, we feel they could go from 10.4 million to $39.5 million. So this looks really aggressive, but actually we think it's very conservative. In fact, we did start working with this organization, And this organization went from overall, they were at 10 million at this point. That was in 2020. By 2024, this organization was at $75 million in major gift revenue. 75 million. They blew our projections away. And how did they do that? They did that because we helped them develop a very disciplined approach to mid and major gifts. And by understanding who the donor was and their passions and interests and matching that up with all that they did, donors started giving higher and higher gifts and blew the doors off of these projections. So this was really important, obviously, when we showed them this, because they were like, oh, you mean to tell me that we could actually bring in much more revenue than we ever thought possible? Yes, you could do that. And they exceeded all of those. Okay. Now, the goal of your program really is to create a fundraising system and strategy that, again, helps that donor give to their capacity. When we were looking at the that donor pipeline, that's all we're trying to do. Remove the barriers and help that donor move from that first gift to their last gift with your organization, and make it as easy as possible for that donor to do that. So here's some things to ask yourself. Are you looking at year-over-year growth of your existing donors? Are you accounting for the impact of that new money on your overall net revenue? What is your rate of promotion to major gifts? So in other words, from your mid-level donors that are moving into major gifts, what percent of your donors from mid-level are going into major gifts every year? Do you know that number? If you do not, you should know that number, because it's very important to understand how many donors are flowing through there. And are you evaluating your donor attrition and donor value attrition? These are some things to ask yourself to understand how your program is doing. Now, here's how you can assess to do your own donor pipeline. This is really important because you want to know by CUME giving levels how many donors you have at each CUME level and how much revenue they're coming in, so that you can identify those clogs. Because once you identify a clog, you can inject some strategy into that area to actually unclog the clog. So you can go to your database and select any donor who's given $1 or more for any of those last 4 years. And for each donor, export the following: donor counts, CUME giving totals, and the average gift amount. And then you can put that into giving ranges. So here's what that looks like. This is the same chart we just saw originally. This is what you need to do with your donor files so you can at least identify where the clogs are. When we showed this to the client, it was eye-opening. They never really looked at their file in this way to see what a stark difference there was between the 4,999 group and the 5,999 group. That's a huge different number of donors there. And so just seeing that show them, gosh, we really need a mid and a major gift program because we don't have many donors in that upper level file. So to have a healthy mid and major program, that's where all functions from donor acquisition to cultivation are functioning and effective. All areas, so that pipeline is free. So here's what a healthy organization looks like. Everyone at the organization sees the donor as a partner. Gift officers seek out and learn the donor's passions and interests. This is huge. The system has to be created to allow the donor to reach their potential. And the organization and gift officers are promptly reporting back on the impact of that donor's gift. This is what a healthy organization looks like. So that data that I showed you a little while ago, that organization, that's something we would love to do for you. We want to know what are the areas in your data that stands out. And we'd love to be able to review that data and show you where there's areas of opportunity and why that's so important. And we do this for free. So why do we do this for free? Because we want you to have great information about your file, and it allows us to get in front of you and tell you how we think Veritus can actually help you unclog those clogs and move your donors up and help your major gift donors give higher levels, because you're now going to be introduced to a very disciplined program that allows you to build authentic relationships with donors. So you can get your free assessment. You could do it by yourself, or you can let us do it for you. We provide that free assessment to every organization that qualifies, and we only require really simple data pull. No, we don't want to know any donor identification at all. We just want IDs for you to have so you can identify back who those donors are. And this is what you'd get. You get an analysis of your donor value attrition over the last 5 years. You get a breakdown of donor value attrition for individuals and organizations. You get a 5-year revenue projection for mid and major gifts. You'll get that whole clog report that I showed you. And then you'll get recommendations on the number of MGOs and MLOs. And you'll be able to see, those 5-year revenue projections make a huge difference. Like where we are today, this is where we could be if we had a disciplined mid and major gift program. So please go get your donor file assessment. It is the single best thing you can do. There's no obligation to work with us. You will get some great information on your file. I can almost guarantee what you saw in this webinar today, you have not looked at your donor file this way before, and you're going to get great information. So Amy, this is a great time right now to answer some questions if we have any.
And we do. Thank you so much. Some good ones.
Okay.
First one speaks into the subject of in-kind donations like bequests, vehicle donations. So the anonymous requester is asking, does donor value attrition factor in one-time donations, vehicle donations, bequests?
Typically, no. We typically ask that you identify who those donors are so that we have the source of that, so that we don't include that kind of in-kind donation. These are cash. We want to know cash gifts.
Okay, great. This one is a subject related to mid-level.
Okay.
And probably how to reward a mid-level officer who's doing the good work of qualifying donors up. So Carl asks, how can we help reward our mid-level in identifying and handing up accounts to major level rather than them feeling penalized for losing their top donors, making it more difficult to reach their annual target?
That's really easy. In their KPIs, they should be rewarded for moving as many donors out of their portfolio into major gifts as possible. So that's one of the problems we've seen with some organizations when they're holding on to their donors. That's a barrier. It's an internal barrier we create that hold back donors from actually going into major gifts. When you have a KPI that says we want to grow the overall portfolio in major gifts with revenue, that means that the mid-level officer is not incentivized to move them out of their portfolio. You have to have keep, lift, and move. So you want to retain these donors. You want to build them up as far as their revenue per donor. So you're tracking revenue per donor. And then you're also tracking what % of the donors are moving up and out of the portfolio. And so those are the 3 areas that you'll want to track as their KPIs for the mid-level rep. And the one other KPI I would add to that for mid-level is the % of donors that have a 2-way engagement with the mid-level officer. So in mid-level, we tier the donors A, B, and C. And specifically with the A-level donors, we're trying to get as high percentage of engagement with those donors as possible because we want to get to know them. We want to understand what their donors' passions and interests are so that we can start introducing them to some new offers to give them at higher levels, which ultimately will move them out of mid to major gifts.
Perfect. Thank you. Okay, another good question. Do you typically include individual donors/gifts that came from events in the individual donor file analysis, or do you analyze those event-related donors in a separate bucket?
That's a good question. We do include the event donors, but along with the donor assessment information we need, one of the things we have is a questionnaire that gives us insight to your donors. And one of the questions will be, how many events do you have? Are you events heavy? You know, because we know that event donors are, by and large, one and done type of donors. And so we'll want to know if your organization is a heavy event donor organization, we take that into account when we're trying to evaluate the entire program. So typically in an event heavy organization, we'll see high value attrition because they're giving that one gift and then they stop giving or they give a lot less. And so knowing that that's how you cultivate and acquire donors affects how we feel your program can grow. And then we'll also, this is where you really want a relationship manager, like a mid-level officer and a major gift officer. You want to focus on that one-to-one fundraising versus the event type of fundraising that you have been doing. But we'll take that into account.
All right, thank you. Well, we'll file this question under a good problem to have.
Okay.
With regard to, quote, telling the donor how they made a difference, unquote, our numbers are so big that even a 100,000K donation can seem insignificant in the large pool of donations and revenue that we bring in. Even though we can tell them you helped 1,000 people have, say, clean and safe water, saving lives, it still feels like it's insignificant as the numbers are still so big, I guess, of who they reach. Like we are reaching 5 million people total. Mm-hmm. And advice into how we can do a good job of helping them know that even a 25K donation made a difference.
Yeah. Well, this is where your infrastructure at your nonprofit has not kept up with the donors' need and demands. In other words, you have so many donors, and we've worked with organizations like yours. You have so many donors, you're not properly set up to report on an impact. And that's where I would say your organization needs to take a hard look at themselves and say, do we actually value our donors? Think about if you're a $100,000 donor and you don't really get much in the way of, I don't know, what happened to my $100,000 gift? Think if you're that donor, giving that amount and not getting back a sufficient amount of information about how that made an impact. That would be devastating. And I bet your value attrition rates are high. And so your organization needs to look at, are we going to invest in these donors who are part of our mission? And our mission is to help our donors find joy in their giving. Remember that. That's part of your mission. And if it is part of your mission, your organization will spend the resources in order to have the infrastructure to report back to the $100,000 and the $25,000 donor and become creative and figure that out. It's very important because think about the millions of dollars you will be losing because you're not doing that because you have so many donors who are giving such high gifts. So I'd ask yourself your organization, those questions, your leadership. Those are the hard questions they have to answer because what you're doing by not reporting back is basically saying your donor's an ATM machine. I know it sounds really harsh, but that's how you're treating them. You're treating them as a means to an end. You're taking their $100,000 and not really showing them how they're making a difference, how they're integral into your mission, to me, that's unconscionable.
Okay, thank you. This is another one. Are there any strategies for getting impact stories / data from our program managers? We know we need to share impact, but do not have a systematic way of getting data.
Yeah. So yes, there are ways to do that. And it all comes from leadership saying that this is a value we need to have. And when that happens, then you'll notice that things become in place, systems come in place, protocols get into place on how to do that. So now, if that's in place, then your program team knows that not only are they doing this work that they're doing so well at, but they've also got to report on it. That's part of their job. That's part of their KPIs, reporting back on the work that they're doing so that the donors who are funding those programs and projects can know how they're making a difference. So for you as a fundraiser, obviously there's some things you can do right now. And it's very simple. Get to know your program people. Understand who they are as people. Get to know them. Take them out to happy hour. Take them out to coffee. Find out what they're doing. Show them that you're interested in their work, because you are. And tell them, if you want to be effective, if you want more money for your program, I need to know what you're doing and how is it working. And I need to know the impact you're making so that I can tell donors this. I need to invite donors to the programs and projects. And I need you to kind of tell them what they're doing. If you can befriend those program people and help them see the importance of it, you'll get a lot further than where you are right now. But on a bigger scale, leadership needs to embrace this idea that they have to be able to report back the impact of gifts to those donors. And that it's so important, they're going to put that into the KPIs of the program teams. So there's a...
Good. That leads into this question on impact reporting. From an organization where it takes them a long time to run the program, complete it, get the results. He says our impact reporting can typically take 12 to 18 months later before we can give a true impact report because of the time it takes to run the program and complete it. What is the recommended time range of when we need to have even an incomplete partial report that we can share back?
I would be reporting back within a couple of months after the gift is made. Just and it doesn't have to be a full-blown report. It can just be, here's what's going on. And here's a story about what the program is doing. Just for the donor hearing that is enough. They don't need to have, well, we helped this many people and this was completed and the whole eventually when it's completed, you can have that. But along the way, it's as simple as showing a video. Let's just say you're building this building. I would show the groundbreaking. Then I would show the walls being built. Then I would show the next floor of the building being built. I would show the tiles being placed in. You know what I mean? It doesn't have to be a building, but incrementally, as you're doing this program, you can show the progress. That is gold for a donor. That's all I'm saying. It doesn't have to be the full-blown report and everything perfect. In fact, it's not going to be perfect. And you need to be able to show that and be vulnerable with donors and let them know how this program is going. So there's all kinds of creative ways to report on impact without all the numbers and everything all buttoned up right away. That's not going to happen. And so that's where you can get creative and help and have your program people really help you do that.
Great. Well, yeah, we talk a lot about the value of these sort of in the moment touch bases, a quick video. Doesn't have to be fancy. It won't take the place of a full impact report, but in the moment, yeah, I mean, that's a great way to get connected. We have a few minutes. If anyone has any additional questions, we are doing well, working through what we've received. These are amazing questions, very good, interesting. But we do have a couple more minutes, or Jeff, what do you think? We want to
Well,
Um,
I can just basically end by saying, please get the donor value assessment. This is, we've done hundreds of them. And every time we've reported back to the organization their data, they have been blown away. I'm not kidding about that. They have not looked at their data the way that I just showed you earlier on this in this webinar. It will give you insights to your donors and your donor behavior that you probably didn't know. It goes just beyond knowing your donor retention rates or overall revenue. This really gets down into how are donors performing over time. And it allows you to see if you had a disciplined program, what you could actually achieve and beyond. So I really think you should take advantage of it. It's free, and it provides a lot of good information for you. And I want to thank you for joining me today. I'm really passionate about this, if you didn't know. I'm very passionate about organizations understanding what it takes to really value donors and to understand that it does take a disciplined approach to this. And if you have that disciplined approach to major gifts, mid-level, major plan giving, you will see the fruits of that labor. You will see the fruits of that investment. I know we've been doing this for 2 decades. Every organization that has worked with us or has taken our training that's implemented this has followed it has been successful. Everyone, because they've been able now to have the time to build those authentic relationships with donors. So thank you for joining me, and please take advantage of the donor assessment. You can go here and look on our website, and tomorrow you'll get the video, and you'll have another opportunity as well to download that information. And then you'll probably hear from Amy,
I was
right,
just going
Amy?
to say, I'm here and I can say, if you want to talk, reach out direct. My email is achapman@veritusgroup.com. Feel free.
All right.
Love to chat with you.
Awesome. Thank you, Amy. Thank
Thank
you,
you.
everyone. We'll talk to you soon.